632, 1320 WILS. Michael Jordan now saying he's heartbroken by what's happened between police and black motorists, and he's in fact donating $2 million to several groups dealing with these issues. But the reality is that it's a large issue that probably won't get resolved, certainly not immediately. And my next guest has some suggestions. He spent 30 years in law enforcement, the last 22 as a senior special agent at the Department of Justice. Bobby Kimbrough joins us. Bobby Kimbrough is the author of the new book, Surviving the Stop, where he gives us all advice on how to do that. Bobby, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, sir. It's a pleasure.
It's Bobby Kimbrough, Jr., by the way. And now you're a senior special agent in the Justice Department. What kind of work were you doing there?
Well, as a senior special agent with the U.S. Department of Justice, I investigated crimes against the government, money laundering, drug trafficking, gangs, violent crimes, drugs, conspiracies.
Everything, it sounds like.
Pretty much.
Yeah? You were just traveling all over the country doing this, or?
Well, my first duty assignment was Detroit. I was in Detroit for 6 years, coming out of Quantico. From there, I was in Virginia for a while, and I spent several years overseas in the Caribbean and a few other countries I can't even remember. Okay. I can't even mention.
And in Detroit, what was that experience like in the D?
Well, the D was a very good experience because the D taught me a lot, the big D. When I was in Detroit, I don't know if you're familiar with Detroit, the Cash Corridor, that was jumping pretty hard, the Cash Corridor.
What time was that? What years were you there?
94.
Okay.
94 to end of 94, Cash Corridor, all down through the 9 mile, out toward Livernois, what's that, Farmington Hill, all down through there.
Yeah, that's a tough time. In fact, I'm guessing you were dealing with all kinds of interactions between police and civilians there.
Oh, no question about it, sir, no question.
Did you ever find that your life was on the line while you were working in Detroit, or?
Well, you know what? I feel your life is on the line anytime you're working in law enforcement, whether you're working as a special agent in the capacity or whether or not you're in a uniform. Anytime you strap on or take an oath, your life is in jeopardy.
Talking to Bobby Kimbrough, Jr., by the way. The brand new book is Surviving the Stop. When did you begin writing this book?
Well, I started writing the book about a year ago, but because I could not release the book while employed as a special agent with the federal government, there had been a conflict of interest. So I helped the book, tweaked it a little bit, and then these recent events took place, and I was entering retirement, approaching retirement. Mm-hmm. So I said, I've got to release this.
And who did you write the book for, though?
I wrote the book for motorists. I wrote the book for those of us who are stopped, those of us that may feel that they're stopped unjustly.
Now, have you ever been stopped where you feel like you're being targeted somehow? As you probably don't know this from talking to me on the phone, but I am an African American, and I've been stopped numerous of times in my capacity as an agent. Mm-hmm. Most recently, I had an experience flying out of the airport about a month or so ago, right before I retired. Me and another agent, Caucasian agent, good friend of mine. We stopped at the gate before we boarded the plane, like most agents do, or any LEO. Told the ticket agent who we were. She called down the jetway, spoke with the captain. She told the captain there's two of them up here. So when the captain came up, he specifically started talking to the white agent that was with me, that was beside me, junior agent at that, and said, so this is the high-risk prisoner. And I looked at him and I said, sir, do I look like a high-risk prisoner? To me, that was an insult. I mean, I was standing in an Armani suit with a pair of Mezmans on, like I was going to take a GQ photo. And I said to the pilot, I said, sir, your unconsciousness just became outright rude. What did he say?
He was blown back by it. I mean, he spent the next at least 3 minutes apologizing.
Yeah, he must have felt horrible about it. And is this something you'd say that is commonplace, that as a black man, as a motorist, that you are treated differently?
Well, I have 7 boys. 5 of them are driving. And I tell my boys all the time, because when people stop me or stop them, they have no idea who they are, what they are. And the first thing I tell them is always listen to what the officers say. Even if you feel like you are wrong, he is wrong and you are right. The side of the road is not the place to hold the court. The side of the road is to try to survive the stop. I've been asked the question several times, well, it seems like, why are you gearing this book toward the driver rather than the police? And my answer is that the police is already armed with knowledge, skills, non-lethal, and lethal weapons. The driver, in most times, is armed with erroneous information, what they think they can and cannot do and don't have to do when coming in contact with the law enforcement.
That makes sense. So tell me this, Bobby, when you're pulled over, do you get a sense as soon as the officer steps up that it may have been because you were black?
Well, you know what? There have been several times where I've been stopped. I was stopped last year. A guy stopped me. I was going through a small town, and he pulled me over, and he asked me, he said, how old are you, sir? And I said I was born in 61. He said, you're old enough to know better than to be speeding. And right away, my blood just started boiling because that wasn't necessary. And so I let him go through his spiel, and then he asked me for my license and my registration. And I said, sir, my license are in the bag over there on the floor, and my credentials and my weapon are also over there. He said, what kind of credentials? And when I told him I was a federal agent, I could see the look on his face. I said, sir, by the way, how old are you? I said, I don't know how old you are, but you're too old to be wearing a mohawk haircut in a police uniform. Show the uniform a little more respect. And
it sounds like it's almost a common thing. Is that how you see it? That it's not uncommon for a black man driving down the road to have these experiences, being pulled over because he's black?
One thing that I said I'll always be truthful, and that is, it's not uncommon to be stopped. No. It's not uncommon. I mean, I'd be lying and doing myself a disservice to say that. I've been stopped many a times myself. Even while in an OGV, which is an official government vehicle, I've been stopped. And
why do you think it is? Why are they stopping you because you're black? What's the thought pattern?
I think that all of us as human beings have a certain degree of bias. All of us do. I think the problem becomes when your bias starts to affect how you see people and affect your decision-making. That's when the problem occurs. I think a lot of times officers, including myself when I was a local officer, we're trained a certain way, we're geared a certain way, and a lot of times, people say, well, is it a police problem? Is it a black problem? Is it a white problem? It's a systemic problem. I mean, the problem is not just a police problem. It's a systemic problem.
Tell me this, Bobby. By the way, the brand new book is Surviving the Stop. I'm talking to Bobby Kimbrough. Now, as an officer yourself in the Department of Justice, did you ever find yourself behaving differently with a black suspect versus a white one?
What I find myself doing is, and there are many times I'm called to interview on a case, and I find that I can relate differently because every race has its own culture, even down to the way we shake hands in the black community, even down to the way we greet, the way we talk. Just the whole dynamics is differently, and there's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with being differently. So when I'm called to interview someone, the first thing I do is I read their bio. I learn everything about them before I interview them. That way, I can reach out at a common denominator, and that's what makes for a better interview. The same thing when we working and doing traffic stops. You come upon someone who you don't know, the officer's doing his job, and at that moment, a relationship and experience is about to take place. And then based on the experience that takes place in that quick 5 to 10 seconds, a certain behavior, a certain outcome.
Well, the officer wants compliance. I need to ask you this, because I've talked to crime experts here who have said that when it comes to these altercations, especially physical between officers and black motorists, is that many times they believe that black motorists are more likely to resist arrest and ignite a physical interaction with the officer. Do you believe that?
I think that here's what I believe.
I haven't seen the data on it. I'm sure that it's data out there that can prove this or prove that. But what I believe is that you create your own atmosphere. You know, one of the things that we teach is tactical communications. My communications can take a conversation from a hostile place to a place of us coming together. It's how you approach a situation, the atmosphere. If you change the atmosphere, you can change the outcome. And that's what needs to take place. The atmosphere that we're existing now in has become too volatile. It's at a
But where does that come from? I mean, where do people get into their heads that they can talk to an officer in an aggressive manner and not expect things to potentially escalate?
You know, we have become so politically correct in our society that we're about to be incorrect. I think that over the years, an officer, anytime you saw one, it was a job of respect. You respected that guy. Now we have dumbed our officers, those that serve in our communities, down to where we have lost total respect for them. Total.
And what's behind that, would you say?
I think it's a cultural thing. I think it's a society that we're in as a whole. I mean, even not just with officers, just the way we treat seniors in our society now, just the way we treat one another, just how vicious we become, even in the election process, how we carry on now.
So I need to ask you this, though. When you see these videos, right, there's certain ones that are just so egregious, but a lot of times we catch the videos after there's been an initial interaction between the officer and the driver, and then we see the violence that comes after. How do you think it bubbles up to that level in terms of the getting to points where officers are shooting these people?
Well, this is what I think. You know, a lot of the videos and things that we see, we catch parts of it. And what I always believe in is that I can't give a decision on an opinion until I see the whole video start to finish. Some of them that I've seen were totally wrong. And sometimes you're going to find people in a profession that shouldn't be there. And in law enforcement, when we find them, we should expel them. When we find them and they've done something like this, we should bring the full penalty of the law down. But how it gets to that point is in the beginning. A traffic stop doesn't start out with, I'm going to shoot you. It doesn't. It starts out with the guy pulling you over, or the officer or the female pulling you over. And right at that moment, right at that initial meeting, that is when the dynamic starts to either spiral out of control or it comes to
I need to coexist. Yeah, and Bobby, I'm going to have you back because we really barely touched the surface here. This incident you talked about where the officer pulled you over and said, look, you're too old to be speeding. You know better than to be speeding, right? You said that made your blood boil. Why is that? What was it about him saying that triggered you to get angry?
First of all, as a formal police officer, I knew that that's not the way you address a motorist. How old are you? You're old enough to know better. Second of all, I know that wasn't a communication skill that was going to get me to comply or get the results that he wanted.
Do you think he was trying to anger you? Is that it?
No. What he was trying to do, I think that he came up on the car, and because he had no idea what I was or who I was, that I was speeding, but he didn't realize I was in an official government vehicle going somewhere. So maybe he came up to the car feeling a certain way. I don't know why he came like that. What I know is that the way he approached me, and that's what we have to remember sometimes, how we approach.
Yeah, it can be everything. Well, and the tone, too. It's Bobby Kimbrough, Jr. The brand new book is Surviving the Stop, and Bobby, will certainly have you back, a man who's spent 30 years in law enforcement, the last 22 as a senior special agent with the Department of Justice. Bobby, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Have a great day. God bless you.